Standing there in my designer dress, champagne in hand, I watched my brother and father announce my replacement as CEO of our family business, a business I'd saved from bankruptcy. They smiled for photos while I stood frozen, but little did they know I'd discovered their plan months ago. If you've ever felt that knife in the back sensation from your own flesh and blood, you might understand the cold calculation that replaced my initial heartbreak. As I share this journey from betrayal to vindication, I'd love to know where you're watching from. The comments section has become a community where we share similar family business nightmares. If this resonates with you, please subscribe to join our growing family of survivors who turned betrayal into triumph. Now let me take you back to where it all began. The Harrington name meant something in the furniture industry long before I was born. My grandfather, William, started Harrington Furniture in his garage in 1945 after returning from World War II. With nothing but skilled hands and determination, he built a reputation for quality craftsmanship that transformed a small workshop into a regional powerhouse. My earliest memories involve the sweet smell of sawdust and the rhythmic sounds of the workshop. I was Emily Harrington, once the golden child of the family. At 37, I dedicated my entire adult life to preserving and growing my grandfather's legacy. Even as a little girl, I'd trail behind my father James as he walked the factory floor, greeting every craftsman by name. He'd place his large hand on my shoulder and tell whoever would listen that I had the business mind in the family. Emily sees things differently, he'd say with pride. She notices details others miss. She'll take Harrington Furniture places I never could. Those words shaped my identity more than anything else. While other girls had ballet recitals and soccer games, I had quarterly earnings reports and supply chain logistics puzzles that my father would simplify for me as games. I loved every minute of it. My younger brother Michael, 3 years my junior, never shared my enthusiasm. While I absorbed everything about the business, Michael spent his weekends with friends, barely acknowledging the family legacy. Dad never seemed to mind though. Boys will be boys, he'd say with a dismissive wave. Michael will find his way eventually. Our mother Rebecca was the balancing force in our lives, encouraging me to enjoy my childhood while supporting my passion for the business. She was the compass that kept our family pointed in the right direction. When cancer took her when I was 22 and Michael was 19, something fundamental shifted in our family dynamic. Without her warmth and mediation, my father and brother formed a different kind of bond, one that sometimes felt like I was on the outside looking in. Despite this, I pursued my education with single-minded focus. I earned my MBA from Wharton, graduating at the top of my class. Job offers poured in from prestigious consulting firms and I accepted a position at McKinsey. My father beamed with pride but never pressured me to join the family business. Get experience out there first, he advised. The company will be here when you're ready. For 3 years, I thrived in the high-pressure world of consulting, honing my skills and building a network that would later prove invaluable. Meanwhile, Harrington Furniture began a gradual decline. My father, approaching his 60s, struggled to adapt to changing market conditions. Michael, who had finally joined the company after bouncing between college majors, showed little initiative beyond collecting his executive salary. Then came the call that changed everything. My father had suffered a major heart attack while at the office. I flew home immediately, taking an indefinite leave of absence from McKinsey. What I found shocked me. The business was in far worse shape than I'd realized. We were 3 months behind on payments to suppliers. Sales had declined 40% over 2 years and the bank was threatening to call in loans that would effectively end the Harrington legacy. Looking at my father in that hospital bed, his usual commanding presence diminished. I made a decision that would alter the course of my life. I wasn't planning to join the family business yet, certainly not under these circumstances, but I couldn't let my grandfather's legacy crumble. I'll step in temporarily, I told my father, just until you're back on your feet. The relief in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. What I didn't realize then was that temporarily would stretch into 12 years of my life, years of sacrifice, innovation, and ultimate betrayal. Stepping into my father's role at Harrington Furniture felt like trying to stop a speeding train with my bare hands. The company was hemorrhaging money. Key employees were updating their resumes and our flagship showroom looked like a relic from the 1980s. I still remember the knot in my stomach when I reviewed the complete financials that first week. We had less than 6 months before complete insolvency. The most immediate resistance came from the old guard. Vernon Miller, our production manager who'd worked alongside my grandfather, crossed his arms and looked down at me during our first meeting. With all due respect, Miss Harrington, we've been making furniture the same way for 50 years. Your fancy MBA won't change what works. What works? I'd replied, sliding the financial reports across the table. Does this look like it's working to you, Vernon? That first year was a crucible. I worked 16-hour days, sleeping on the leather sofa in my father's, now my, office more nights than I care to remember. My fiancé Daniel grew increasingly frustrated with my absences and the constant phone calls interrupting our rare moments together. It's always going to be the business first with you, isn't it? He'd asked one night after I'd missed his birthday dinner because a major client was threatening to pull their order. This is temporary, I insisted. Once Dad recovers, once we're stable again. But the engagement ended 6 months later. Daniel wasn't wrong. The business had consumed me. Meanwhile, Michael maintained his executive title and salary while rarely appearing at the office. When he did show up, it was to charm visitors or take long lunches with Dad's old golf buddies. He had the Harrington name and charm, but none of the commitment. With my personal life in shambles, I channeled everything into saving the company. I implemented changes that caused near revolts, transitioning to sustainable materials before it was trendy, modernizing our classic designs to appeal to younger buyers, and investing heavily in digital marketing when our competitors were still relying on print catalogs and showroom foot traffic. The turning point came when I secured a partnership with Restoration Heritage, a rapidly growing national retailer looking for American-made furniture with a story. I spent weeks developing a pitch that honored our traditional craftsmanship while highlighting our new sustainable practices. The night before the presentation, I found myself alone in the factory, running my hands over a cherry wood dining table my grandfather had designed. "Help me save what you built," I whispered. The Avar Restoration Heritage deal changed everything. Within 18 months, we'd gone from near bankruptcy to profitability. By year 3, we'd doubled our workforce and modernized our production facilities. I developed our signature heritage collection, which reinterpreted my grandfather's classic designs with contemporary materials and functionality, the perfect bridge between our past and future. My father recovered gradually, returning to work in a reduced capacity. He seemed proud of the changes, publicly praising my leadership while privately questioning some of my more progressive decisions. Michael remained a peripheral figure, occasionally stepping in for photo shoots or client entertainment, always careful to position himself as part of the leadership in company materials. By year 5, we'd grown to $20 million in annual revenue. By year 10, we approached $30 million and were debt-free for the first time in decades. I'd sacrificed my personal life on the altar of family legacy, but the results were undeniable. Harrington Furniture had transformed from a regional manufacturer on the brink of failure to a national brand synonymous with sustainable luxury. With the domestic business thriving, I began developing plans for international expansion. European and Asian markets showed promising interest in American-crafted sustainable furniture, and I spent months researching potential partnerships and distribution channels. The expansion would require significant investment but promised to double our revenue within 5 years. After 12 years at the helm, I finally felt I'd fulfilled my promise to my grandfather. I'd not only saved his legacy, but elevated it beyond what anyone thought possible. What I didn't realize was that my very success had planted the seeds of betrayal. The first hint that something was amiss came during a routine Monday morning meeting about 6 months ago. My father, who had settled into a comfortable advisory role focusing on relationships with our longest-standing clients, mentioned that he and Michael had met with our banker over the weekend. "Just a casual lunch," he said, waving away my raised eyebrow. "Nothing worth bothering you about." It was odd. I handled all our banking relationships as CEO. When I called our account manager later that day to follow up, he seemed uncomfortable, mentioning something about family ownership structures before quickly changing the subject. Over the following weeks, I noticed other inconsistencies. Michael, who typically spent more time on golf courses than in conference rooms, suddenly developed an interest in our operations. He began appearing at the office 3 or 4 days a week, scheduling meetings with department heads and requesting copies of contracts and financial reports. Just trying to contribute more, he explained with that easy smile that charmed teachers into passing him. Despite missing assignments, you've carried the load long enough, sis. His newfound dedication might have been touching if it hadn't coincided with my father becoming increasingly evasive. Twice I walked into his office to find him hurriedly ending phone calls. Calendar invitations for meetings I would normally attend stopped appearing in my inbox. Then came the day I overheard a fragment of conversation as I approached my father's office. The door was slightly ajar, and Michael's voice drifted into the hallway. Restructuring the leadership makes sense before the international push. Emily's done great, but they went silent when I knocked. Inside, my father and brother sat with Robert Caldwell, owner of our chief competitor, Caldwell Furniture. The three men looked like schoolboys caught planning a prank. Emily, we were just discussing industry trends, my father said too brightly. Bob was sharing some insights on the European market. Robert couldn't quite meet my eyes as he shook my hand. Your father speaks highly of your accomplishments, Emily. Turning this company around is no small feat. Thank you, I replied, noting his use of past tense. I'd love to hear your European market insights, considering our expansion plans. An uncomfortable silence followed before Michael jumped in. We're still in preliminary discussions, nothing concrete to share yet. After Robert left, I directly asked what was happening. Both assured me they were simply exploring all options for our international expansion. It sounded reasonable enough, but a cold feeling had settled in my stomach. That feeling intensified when Margaret, our office manager, who had been with the company for 25 years, stopped by my office after hours. I probably shouldn't say anything, she began, fidgeting with her reading glasses. But my loyalty is to this company and to your grandfather's memory. She proceeded to tell me about whispers among the longtime employees. My father had been holding closed-door meetings with lawyers. Michael had been giving tours to investors without my knowledge. Most troublingly, Robert Caldwell had been seen leaving my father's house late one evening with what looked like contract documents. People are worried, Margaret concluded. After everything you've done to save us all, I thanked her for her loyalty, but downplayed my concerns. Once alone, I opened my father's calendar, which I still had access to as an administrator. There it was, a pattern of meetings with lawyers, bankers and Robert Caldwell, all carefully scheduled when I would be occupied with other matters. The next day, I arrived early and searched my father's desk, something I'd never have considered before. In his bottom drawer, beneath a stack of old photos, I found documents outlining ownership percentages of Harrington Furniture. According to the papers, my father had transferred a significant of his shares to Michael over the past year, giving my brother effective control when combined with his existing stake. Our company lawyer, Thomas Baker, who I'd always considered a family friend, became suspiciously evasive when I inquired about upcoming contract renewals for our executive team, including myself. These things are routine, he assured me, without meeting my eyes. Nothing to worry about until closer to the renewal date. The final piece fell into place when I noticed Michael's sudden friendship with Robert Caldwell. They began appearing in social media photos together at exclusive golf clubs and charity events. One image showed them with their arms around each other's shoulders, captioned, "Exciting new ventures ahead with the furniture industry's brightest mind. Next generation, family legacy." Our Sunday family dinners, a tradition I'd maintained, even during the most stressful periods of the company turnaround, became tense affairs filled with cryptic comments about the future of Harrington and necessary evolutionary steps. After one particularly uncomfortable dinner, where my father and brother exchanged knowing glances throughout the meal, I made a decision that went against every ethical principle I held. I asked our IT director, who was fiercely loyal to me after I'd approved his flexible schedule when his wife was diagnosed with MS, to install monitoring software on my office computer. "Someone's been accessing files without authorization." I lied. "I need to know who and what they're looking at." He asked no questions, and within 24 hours, I had the ability to access any emails sent through our company server. I hated myself for the invasion of privacy, but the growing dread in my stomach told me my family legacy and my life's work hung in the balance. 3 weeks after installing the monitoring software, I stayed late at the office. Everyone had gone home, and the building held that peculiar silence unique to abandoned workspaces. With a deep breath, I opened the monitoring program and began searching through my father's emails. What I found shattered any remaining illusions about my place in the family and the business. The first email was from my father to Robert Caldwell, dated nearly a year earlier. Bob had a productive conversation with Michael about the future of Harrington. We both agree that while Emily has done remarkable work stabilizing the company, her vision is too progressive for the long term. The international expansion she's proposing would dilute what makes her special. Michael has some innovative ideas more aligned with tradition. Let's discuss how our companies might work together with him at the helm. My hands trembled as I continued reading. There were dozens of exchanges outlining a plan that had been in motion for months. My father and brother, working with our chief competitor, had been orchestrating my removal as CEO. The plan involved announcing Michael as the new chief executive at our upcoming 75th anniversary celebration, which coincided with the launch of my Heritage Collection, the product line I had personally designed to honor my grandfather's legacy. Most devastating was an email draft dated 3 months prior, clearly intended for the board of directors and key stakeholders. It is with great pride that we announce the appointment of Michael Harrington as Chief Executive Officer of Harrington Furniture, effective immediately following our 75th anniversary celebration. Michael represents the fourth generation of Harrington leadership and brings fresh vision while honoring our traditions. We thank Emily Harrington for her service during the company's restructuring period and wish her well in her future endeavors. Service during the restructuring period. 12 years of my life reduced to a transitional footnote. Further digging revealed that my father had been systematically transferring additional company shares to Michael over the past 18 months, ensuring that my brother would have controlling interest. The transfer documents characterize these as gifts in anticipation of succession planning, dated shortly after our revenues had hit record highs. The betrayal cut deeper when I discovered presentation materials claiming my innovative product designs as Michael's work. Slides prepared for the announcement featured my brother presenting the Heritage Collection I had personally developed, with talking points about his vision for honoring our grandfather's craftsmanship while moving the company forward. Chataki. Financial arrangement detailed in the emails was equally calculated. I would be offered a buyout at significantly below market value, with the justification that the company's success was primarily due to the Harrington legacy and client relationships, rather than my leadership. If I refused, they had prepared a narrative about my burnout and desire to pursue other opportunities, but nothing prepared me for the email from my father to Robert Caldwell that finally broke me. Emily has served her purpose. The company needed her analytical skills and drive to weather the financial crisis. But Harrington Furniture is a family legacy that should be led by someone who truly embodies our values. Michael has matured significantly and is ready to take his rightful place. The international expansion provides the perfect opportunity for transition. We'll need to present it as a strategic difference of opinion. Served her purpose. After everything I had sacrificed, everything I had built, I was just a temporary tool to be discarded once the real heir was ready. I printed key documents, forwarded critical emails to my personal account, and then carefully removed all traces of the monitoring software. As I gathered my things to leave, the full weight of what I'd discovered crashed over me. I collapsed into my chair, tears finally breaking through the shock. For hours I sat alone in my darkened office, the only light coming from the desk lamp, illuminating the evidence of my family's betrayal. My first instinct was confrontation, to march into the next board meeting with these documents and expose their scheme. My second was legal action. I had grounds for a lawsuit that would tear the company apart. But as dawn broke outside my window, a different kind of clarity emerged. Through my tears, if they wanted to play chess, they would discover I was several moves ahead. I've been rebuilding my life after this family betrayal for months now. If you're going through something similar, please know you're not alone. The support from this community has been incredible. Drop a comment below if you've ever had to strategize your way through a betrayal, family, business, or otherwise. I read every comment, and your stories help others realize they're not alone in these struggles. Now let me tell you how I began planning my response to this devastating discovery. The morning after discovering the betrayal, I arrived at the office precisely at 8, dressed immaculately in a navy suit that had always been my armor for difficult negotiations. No one looking at me would have guessed I'd spent the night alternating between tears and fury. I smiled at colleagues, approved routine requests, and maintained perfect composure in a budget meeting. But beneath this calm exterior, my mind was calculating. Chess, not checkers. That evening, I called Patricia Wallace, an attorney I'd met at a Women in Business conference years earlier. Patricia had a reputation for handling family business disputes with ruthless efficiency. Her firm was in Boston, far from our company's network of local lawyers who all golfed with my father. "They're planning to push you out after you save the business?" Patricia asked after I explained the situation. The disbelief in her voice validated my sense of injustice. "And your brother has been positioning himself to take credit for your work. Classic family business disaster." "I need to understand my options," I said. "But more importantly, I need to understand my leverage." Patricia didn't sugarcoat the reality. Family business disputes are ugly, expensive, and typically end with no real winners. Your best leverage will be found in what the business needs, that only you can provide. That conversation sparked my first strategic insight. I was the sole signatory required on the international expansion contracts, work that had been in progress for months. Without my signature, the expansion couldn't move forward. This gave me time. Over the next week, I conducted a careful assessment of where I stood. I identified key employees whose loyalty lay with me rather than the Harrington name. Jessica, in marketing, who I'd promoted when she returned from maternity leave against my father's objections. Marcus in product development, whose modern design approach I'd championed despite traditional pushback. Daniela in sales, who'd thrived under the performance-based compensation system I'd implemented over my father's preference for seniority-based pay. I had quiet conversations with each, never explicitly mentioning my discovery, but asking hypothetical questions about their career ambitions and loyalty to the company versus its current direction. If significant changes in leadership were to happen, I asked Daniela during a coffee run, "What would keep you at Harrington?" Her answer was immediate. "You, the culture you've built, the way you recognize performance over politics." She hesitated before adding, "There are rumors, Emily. People are worried about what happens if you step back." Similar conversations confirmed what I hoped. Many of our top performers would follow me if I left, but I needed more than people. I needed to secure my work. I spent late nights meticulously gathering and organizing documentation of all my contributions, original sketches for the Heritage Collection, meeting notes showing the evolution of ideas, emails confirming my design directions. I created secure backups of everything I had legally developed, while being careful not to take proprietary information that belonged to the company. Patricia connected me with an intellectual property attorney who helped me understand exactly what I owned versus what the company owned. The distinction would be critical in what came next. My most delicate move was reaching out to our 3 largest clients, who together represented 40% of our revenue. These weren't just business relationships. These were people who had trusted my vision when I took over a struggling company. I scheduled lunch meetings presented as routine check-ins. With Restoration Heritage's purchasing director, I was carefully indirect. "I'm doing some long-term planning and wanted to understand, what aspects of our relationship do you value? Most? Is it the Harrington name specifically or the direction we've taken under my leadership?" His response was encouraging. "Emily, I'll be blunt. We partnered with Harrington because of you, your commitment to sustainability before it was trendy, your quality control standards, your transparency when issues arise. The Heritage name got you in the door, but you're why we stay." Similar conversations with other key clients confirmed what I suspected. Their loyalty was to me and my approach, not just to the Harrington name. With these relationships discreetly secured, I turned to analyzing the competition, particularly Caldwell Furniture, which appeared to be central to whatever my father and brother were planning. I researched their market position, identified their vulnerabilities, and studied their recent strategic moves. Robert Caldwell had always focused on traditional, high-end furniture with minimal innovation. His company was profitable but stagnant, appealing to an aging demographic, precisely the path my father wanted to return to. The financial aspect was my biggest challenge. Starting a new venture would require significant capital. After consulting with a financial advisor, I made the difficult decision to secure a personal loan against my house, the historic Victorian I'd carefully restored over the past decade. The loan would provide enough runway to launch a competing venture if necessary. Throughout these preparations, the emotional toll was immense. Each Sunday dinner became an exercise in restraint as I listened to my father and brother discuss company matters with new exclusivity. Michael would casually mention decisions made in meetings I hadn't been invited to. My father would talk about returning to our roots and honoring tradition in ways that implicitly criticized my leadership. One evening, as we finished dinner, my father raised his glass in a toast to family legacy and the exciting new chapter ahead. Michael clinked his glass against our father's with a smug smile. To the future of Harrington. I raised my glass and met their eyes steadily. To getting exactly what one deserves. They nodded, oblivious to my meaning. In that moment, watching them congratulate themselves while plotting my professional execution, I felt a strange sense of calm. They thought they were arranging my resignation from a company. They had no idea I was planning their education. The 75th anniversary celebration of Harrington Furniture wasn't just another corporate milestone. For 3 generations, the company had been the backbone of our community, employing hundreds of families and sustaining traditional craftsmanship. Through economic upheavals, the event, combined with the launch of the Heritage Collection, represented both our history and future. A future I had painstakingly crafted, but would apparently not be part of. Planning for the celebration had begun 6 months earlier, long before I discovered the betrayal. I'd envisioned it as a proud moment to honor my grandfather's legacy while showcasing our evolution. Now, I understood it had been designed with a very different purpose: my professional funeral. The guest list looks impressive, I commented, during a planning meeting 3 weeks before the event. The governor, major clients, industry press, quite a backdrop for your big announcement. My father's hand froze momentarily as he reached for his coffee. What announcement are you referring to? I maintained a pleasant smile. The international expansion, of course. Isn't that what we've been working toward? The relief on his face was almost comical. Yes, of course, though we're still finalizing those details. Michael, who had insisted on joining the planning committee despite his previous disinterest in such administrative tasks, quickly changed the subject. The caterer needs final numbers by Friday. Emily, can you handle that? The irony wasn't lost on me. They wanted me to perfect every detail of the event designed to showcase my replacement. I agreed with apparent enthusiasm, using the opportunity to ensure I had influence over key elements of the evening. As the event drew closer, my father and brother grew increasingly confident. Their hints became less subtle, dropped into conversations like test balloons to gauge my reaction. The company is entering a new phase, my father remarked during a review of the anniversary brochure. Sometimes leadership needs to evolve with changing times. Absolutely, I agreed. Evolution is essential for survival. He seemed relieved by my apparent obliviousness. Meanwhile, I continued my preparations, working with Patricia to finalize my post-announcement plans while maintaining a flawless facade at work. 2 weeks before the event, I made a critical decision about my appearance for the evening. After considerable thought, I ordered a custom gown in vibrant red, a deliberate departure from my usual conservative blues and grays. If they planned to sideline me, I would ensure I couldn't be visually ignored. The dress was elegant but commanding, with clean lines that signaled confidence rather than surrender. A bold choice, commented the boutique owner during my final fitting. You'll be the center of attention. That's the plan, I replied. The week before the launch party, my father made a last-minute request that revealed their growing anxiety about loose ends. Emily, legal sent over some standard IP forms for the Heritage Collection designs, he said, sliding a document across my desk. Just confirming that everything developed during your tenure belongs to the company. Standard procedure for a major product launch. I glanced at the papers, noting the carefully worded clauses that would have signed away personal claims to any designs or innovations I'd created. I'll have my assistant review these, I said casually. Things are so hectic with the event planning. It's really just a formality, he pressed. We could use your signature today. Of course, I smiled. Let me just finish this call with restoration. Heritage first. They're confirming their order quantities for the Heritage line. He couldn't push further without revealing his urgency. The papers remained unsigned on my desk. Meanwhile, Michael's behavior during final preparations betrayed his nervousness beneath the smugness. I discovered him in the company showroom after hours, practicing his acceptance speech in front of the mirror. As the new chief executive officer I look forward to honoring our traditions while bringing fresh perspective to Harrington Furniture," he rehearsed, adjusting his tie with uncertain fingers. My sister's efforts during our restructuring period provided a foundation for this exciting new chapter. I quietly stepped back before he noticed me, a mixture of pity and determination washing over me. Michael had always been in my shadow, his insecurities masked by charm and privilege. In some ways, he was as much a victim of our father's outdated values as I was, though that didn't excuse his willing participation in my ousting. 3 days before the event, I reviewed the final guest list and seating arrangements. The strategy became even clearer. They had invited every significant industry figure, major client and press contact, all positioned to witness my humiliation and Michael's ascension. My father had arranged the timing perfectly, announced the new CEO, introduce the Heritage Collection as Michael's brainchild, and present the international expansion as his vision rather than mine. The morning of the party, I woke at dawn after a restless night, standing at my bedroom window overlooking the garden my mother had once tended. I mentally prepared for the evening ahead. The hurt had crystallized into something harder, more useful. I carefully applied my makeup, styled my hair in an elegant updo, and slipped into the red dress that would ensure all eyes would be on me when their plan unfolded. As I fastened my mother's pearl earrings, the only jewelry I chose for the evening, I studied my reflection. They have no idea what's coming, I told myself, absolutely no idea. The venue for Harrington Furniture's 75th anniversary celebration was our newly renovated warehouse showcase. A project I had championed to transform a century-old industrial space into a stunning display of heritage meets modern design. Crystal chandeliers hung from restored wooden beams, while the original brick walls provided a perfect backdrop for our furniture collections. The juxtaposition of old and new perfectly embodied what I had accomplished with the company. I arrived precisely 30 minutes after the official start time, late enough to make an entrance, early enough to be appropriate. The red dress achieved exactly the effect I'd intended. Conversations paused momentarily as I entered, and several photographers immediately turned their cameras in my direction. I noted with satisfaction the flash of concern that crossed my father's face when he saw me. "Emily, you look stunning," said Catherine Reynolds, our longest-standing client, embracing me warmly. "This event is magnificent. Your grandfather would have been so proud of what you've created here." "Thank you, Catherine. That means more than you know." For the next hour, I worked the room methodically, connecting with every key client, industry partner, and influential press contact. I made a point of reinforcing my personal relationships with each, reminiscing about specific meetings and decisions that had strengthened our partnerships. "Remember when we reconfigured the entire production line in 3 days to meet your emergency order after the flood at your Chicago warehouse?" I asked the operations director from Restoration Heritage. "That kind of responsiveness won't change, regardless of what announcements come tonight." He looked puzzled. "Announcements? Is there something I should know about?" I touched his arm gently. "I'm sure all will be clear soon. Just remember who made those tough calls when it mattered." Across the room, I could see Michael nervously downing his 3rd glass of champagne while my father whispered what appeared to be last-minute coaching. Michael's wife, Sarah, caught my eye and quickly looked away. She had always been uncomfortable with the family dynamics, perhaps sensing the undercurrents better than her husband did. At 8:3, the event coordinator signaled that it was time for the formal program to begin. Guests were directed to the central area where a small stage had been set up. My father took the microphone first, his commanding presence instantly quieting the crowd. "Welcome, friends and family, to this momentous occasion. 75 years ago, my father William Harrington returned from war with nothing but his hands and his dreams. Today, we stand in this magnificent space celebrating not just his legacy, but the future of American craftsmanship." He spoke at length about the company's history, the challenges weathered, and the traditions maintained. He mentioned my contributions, though notably framed them as steadying the ship during financial headwinds, rather than the complete reinvention and salvation I had actually accomplished. "Family businesses are unique," he continued, his voice taking on the practice gravity he reserved for important pronouncements. "They require difficult decisions about succession and leadership. As Harrington Furniture looks toward its centennial, we must ensure the right vision guides us forward and maintain perfect composure, my expression pleasantly attentive despite knowing exactly what was coming. It is with great pride that I announce a new chapter in our leadership. My son, Michael Harrington, will assume the role of Chief Executive Officer, effective immediately. Polite applause rippled through the crowd, though I noted many confused glances in my direction. My father gestured for Michael to join him on stage. Additionally, my father continued, "We're thrilled to unveil our new Heritage Collection, which reinterprets classic designs for modern living, a project Michael has been quietly spearheading. For the past year, the audacity of the lie was breathtaking. On the screens around the room, images of my designs appeared, furniture I had sketched late into the night, prototypes I had refined through countless iterations, pieces that represented my vision for honoring tradition while embracing sustainability and modern functionality." Michael stepped forward, straightening his shoulders in a poor imitation of confidence. "Thank you, Father. It's a profound honor to step into this role and continue the Harrington legacy." He launched into his practice speech, claiming credit for my work with each word. As he spoke, I maintained my smile, making eye contact with key industry figures whose expressions ranged from confused to openly skeptical. Patricia Wallace, standing near the back as planned, gave me an imperceptible nod. Finally, Michael concluded, "I'm excited to announce that under my leadership, Harrington Furniture will be exploring a strategic partnership with Caldwell Furniture for our international expansion, combining our strengths to bring American craftsmanship to global markets." Robert Caldwell stepped forward, shaking Michael's hand for the cameras. My father beamed with pride, and for a moment the three men stood together, a tableau of male leadership congratulating itself. "And now," my father said, "a few words from Emily, who has been an important part of our company's recent history." The condescension in his phrasing, recent history, rather than acknowledging my 12 years of leadership, was the final confirmation that the script had been written long ago. I walked to the stage with measured steps, accepting the microphone with a gracious smile. The room fell silent, anticipation hanging in the air. Many clearly expected tears, anger, or shocked surprise. Instead, I spoke with perfect composure. "Thank you, Father. First, I'd like to congratulate Michael. Taking on leadership of a family business is no small responsibility." I turned to the audience. As many of you know, when I stepped in 12 years ago, Harrington Furniture was 3 months from bankruptcy. Our journey from that precipice to tonight's celebration has been remarkable. I paused, letting the reality of that transformation sink in with the audience. I'm particularly proud of the Heritage Collection we're launching tonight. These designs represent my personal vision for honoring my grandfather's craftsmanship while embracing sustainable materials and modern functionality. The emphasis on my was subtle but unmistakable. I could see Michael's shift uncomfortably. As I look toward the future, I'm excited to continue innovating in the furniture industry, creating pieces that honor tradition while embracing progress. The relationships we've built together over these 12 years mean everything to me, and I look forward to our continued collaborations, albeit in a new chapter. The coded message was clear to those who needed to hear it. I finished with a toast to my grandfather's legacy and stepped gracefully from the stage. The applause was thunderous, far exceeding the polite reception Michael had received. For the remainder of the evening, I continued circulating, accepting condolences and confused inquiries with enigmatic responses. Change is the only constant. In business, I would say with a knowing smile, the future holds exciting possibilities. By the end of the night, my father and brother's triumph had been tempered by uncertainty. The narrative they had carefully constructed, of a smooth, natural transition, had been subtly undermined by my composed performance and the visible confusion of industry insiders who clearly understood my role in the company's success. As I left the venue, I caught my father watching me with narrowed eyes. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in his expression. He was beginning to realize that while they might have orchestrated my exit, I was the one controlling the final act. The morning after the launch party, I arrived at the office to find my personal belongings already packed into 3 cardboard boxes. My name had been removed from the door, and Michael's was freshly installed in its place. Margaret, the office manager, couldn't meet my eyes as she handed me the termination papers. "This is wrong," she whispered. "After everything you've done, I squeezed her hand reassuringly. Everything happens for a reason, Margaret. Trust the process. My father and Michael appeared as I was reviewing the documents, clearly expecting resistance, tears, or outrage. Instead, I signed the papers with a steady hand and a slight smile. The severance is generous, I noted, referring to the 6-month salary they'd offered. A pittance compared to the value I'd created, but exactly what I expected. I appreciate that. Michael looked suspicious. You're taking this. Well, did you expect something different? I asked, gathering my personal items. The company is in your hands now. I wish you both success. My father seemed uncomfortable with my composure. Emily, I hope you understand this was a business decision. The company needed a different direction. I finished for him. You've made that clear. No need to explain further. As I walked out of the building I had revitalized, carrying 12 years of my life in 3 cardboard boxes, I felt a strange sense of lightness. The betrayal still stung, but now I could move forward with my plans without pretense. The following Monday, I signed the lease on a commercial space across town, a former textile mill with character and potential, much like the warehouse I had transformed for Harrington. By Wednesday, I had filed incorporation papers for Harrington Heritage, a name carefully chosen to invoke my personal legacy while remaining legally distinct from the family business. Phone calls began almost immediately. Jessica from marketing was the first. Is it true? You're starting something new. I want in. Marcus from product development followed. They've already scrapped 3 of your design innovations. Michael says they're too experimental. I can't work like this. Within 2 weeks, 7 key employees had resigned from Harrington Furniture to join my new venture. I hadn't directly recruited any of them. I didn't need to. The culture shock of Michael's leadership after mine was doing the work. For me, the most significant call came from David Chen, Restoration Heritage's purchasing director. I've been trying to reach you, he said. We have concerns about the changes at Harrington. This partnership with Caldwell doesn't align with our sustainability commitments. Michael couldn't answer basic questions about the sourcing for the Heritage Collection, which, by the way, everyone knows was your creation. I'm starting something new, I told him. I'd be happy to discuss it when you're in town next week. I'll move some meetings around. How's tomorrow? The dominoes continued falling. Daniela from sales brought with her detailed information about pending orders and client concerns, all obtained legally and ethically before her departure. Our IT director joined, bringing his expertise and contacts with sustainable technology providers. With each addition, Harrington Heritage took shape not as a replica of my former company, but as the purest expression of the vision I'd been incrementally implementing for years. 3 weeks after the launch party, Furniture Today, the industry's leading publication, ran a feature story headlined, Harrington Heir Apparent Pushed Aside After Saving Family Business. The reporter had been at the anniversary event and had spent the following weeks interviewing industry insiders about the abrupt leadership change. The article detailed my 12-year transformation of the company, the innovations I'd introduced, and the questionable timing of my removal, just as these efforts had positioned the company for international expansion. It stopped short of outright criticism, but raised pointed questions about the wisdom of replacing the architect of the company's revival. The day the article was published, my father called, his voice tight with controlled anger. What did you say to Furniture Today? This makes us look terrible. I didn't speak to them at all, I replied truthfully. The reporter was at the launch party. He drew his own conclusions. You're sabotaging the company your grandfather built, he accused. No, father. I saved the company my grandfather built twice, the first time from financial ruin, and now from outdated thinking that would return it there. The next blow came when Robert Caldwell abruptly withdrew from the partnership negotiations with Harrington Furniture. Industry rumors suggested he'd grown concerned about the exodus of talent and the negative press. Without the Caldwell connection, Michael's international expansion plan collapsed. Meanwhile, Harrington Heritage secured its first major contract with Restoration Heritage. Naturally, David Chen signed an exclusive agreement for our first collection, which I had begun designing the night after I discovered the betrayal. The collection, called Evolution, subtly referenced my grandfather's classic designs, while pushing boundaries in sustainability and functionality. Your brother tried to convince us to honor their existing contracts, David told me after signing. He didn't understand that our relationship was with you, not the company name. Within 4 months, Harrington Heritage had recruited 20 former Harrington Furniture employees, secured contracts with 5 major retailers, and established a production facility using advanced sustainable manufacturing techniques. Our first collection received rave reviews at the industry trade show, where Michael's revised Heritage collection, stripped of my more innovative elements, was largely ignored. The final devastating blow to my former company came when quality issues began emerging under Michael's leadership. Without my rigorous standards and the experienced team members who had followed me, Harrington Furniture began shipping products with inconsistent finishes and structural weaknesses. Major retailers began canceling orders after customer complaints mounted. The company's stock value, which had tripled during my tenure, plummeted as financial analysts questioned the wisdom of the leadership change. Whispers of potential bankruptcy began circulating, exactly the situation I had rescued them from 12 years earlier. I took no pleasure in their struggles, but I couldn't deny the vindication I felt watching the consequences of their decisions unfold. The chess game was reaching its conclusion, with each piece moving exactly as I had anticipated. 6 months after my unceremonious dismissal from Harrington Furniture, I stood on stage at the American Furniture Design Awards, accepting the prestigious Innovation Excellence Trophy for Harrington Heritage's debut collection. The audience of industry leaders gave me a standing ovation, not just for the designs but for what they represented: resilience, vision, and ethical leadership. This award honors the legacy of craftsmanship my grandfather instilled in me, I said. During my acceptance speech, William Harrington believed that furniture should be beautiful, functional, and built to last generations. Today, we've added sustainability to those core values, ensuring that what we create honors both tradition and our planet's future. The contrast between my new company's trajectory and my former family business couldn't have been starker. While Harrington Heritage flourished, securing contracts with premium retailers across the country, Harrington Furniture was struggling to maintain its market position. Quality issues under Michael's leadership had led major clients to cancel orders, and their stock had lost 40% of its value in 6 months. I maintained a dignified silence about my former company's troubles, even as industry insiders approached me at events with knowing looks and whispered updates. "Your brother tried to reverse your sustainability initiatives to cut costs," one supplier told me. "Ended up with a shipment of veneer that warped within weeks of delivery." I took no pleasure in their struggles, but I couldn't deny the sense of justice as the consequences of their decisions became increasingly apparent. The furniture industry, despite its size, functions like a small community. Word travels fast, and reputations, both good and bad, tend to stick. One Tuesday afternoon, as I was reviewing design prototypes in our studio, my assistant interrupted with unusual hesitation. "Emily, your father is here. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's insisting on seeing you." I paused, letting the surprise wash over me. "Show him in." James Harrington entered my office with none of his usual commanding presence. He looked older, the lines around his eyes deeper, his shoulders slightly stooped. For a moment, I saw him not as the man who had betrayed me, but as my aging father, a realization that both softened and complicated my feelings. "This is impressive," he said, gesturing to the bright open workspace visible through my glass office walls. "You've done all this in 6 months." "Thank you. What can I do for you, father?" He sat heavily in the chair opposite my desk. "Harrington Furniture is in trouble. The quality issues, the canceled orders, Michael isn't over his head." I waited, saying nothing. "The bank is threatening to call in our loans," he continued. "We could lose everything your grandfather built." "That would be unfortunate," I replied evenly, "but I'm not sure why you're telling me this." "I made a terrible mistake," he said, the words clearly difficult for him. "I was wrong about Michael being ready. I was wrong about the direction the company needed. And I was wrong about you." The admission hung in the air between us. "What influenced your decision?" I asked, genuinely curious after months of speculation. He looked away, embarrassment coloring his features. "Old-fashioned thinking, the belief that a son should lead the family business, pressure from some of our oldest clients who weren't comfortable with your more progressive approaches, and maybe," he hesitated, "maybe some jealousy at how completely you had transformed what I thought was my legacy." The honesty was unexpected and disarming. "I'm sorry, Emily, for what that's worth now." I studied him for a long moment. "What exactly are you asking for, father?" "Your help, your expertise. Maybe a partnership between our companies to steady the ship. I shook my head slowly. I won't come back. That chapter is closed. His shoulders slumped further, but I continued. However, I might consider a limited collaboration that would benefit both companies. Harrington Heritage could license certain designs to Harrington Furniture, with strict quality control oversight from my team. It wouldn't solve all your problems, but it might help stabilize things while you reorganize. Hope flickered in his eyes. You'd do that? After everything? Not for you, I said honestly. For grandfather's legacy, and for the employees who remain there, the ones who had no part in your decisions. We discussed preliminary terms, and I made it clear that any arrangement would be strictly business, with legally binding agreements rather than family handshakes. As he prepared to leave, he paused at the door. Your mother would have been proud of you, he said quietly. She always said you had both the head and heart to do remarkable things. The mention of my mother the first in many months caught me off guard. I simply nodded, not trusting my voice in that moment. 2 weeks later, Michael announced his resignation as CEO of Harrington Furniture, citing personal reasons and a desire to explore other opportunities. The company's board appointed an interim CEO, a respected industry veteran with turnaround experience, while they conducted a search for permanent leadership. Over the following months, the collaboration between our companies helped stabilize Harrington Furniture enough to satisfy their creditors. The company survived, though it would never regain its former market position. Meanwhile, Harrington Heritage continued its meteoric rise, expanding into new markets and winning acclaim for both design innovation and ethical business practices. The final chapter of this story came full circle 18 months after my dismissal. Harrington Furniture, still struggling despite the stabilizing measures, received a buyout offer from an investment group. As the details emerged, it became clear that I was the primary investor behind the group. I purchased the Harrington name and original factory, the one my grandfather had expanded from his garage workshop, for 20 cents on the dollar of its value during my leadership. The acquisition allowed me to reunite the Harrington legacy under my vision, while maintaining the innovative direction of Harrington Heritage. My father, by then semi-retired, accepted my offer of a ceremonial role as Heritage Ambassador representing the company's history at select events. It was a position that honored his connection to the legacy, while keeping him far from operational decisions. Today, as I sit in my office overlooking the production floor of what is now simply Harrington, having merged both companies under the original name, I can see my grandfather's original workbench displayed prominently in our lobby. Beside it hangs a photo of him, my father as a young man, and me as a child, all 3 generations in the original workshop. On my desk sits a more private photo, one of my mother holding me as a baby, her smile radiant and hopeful. Sometimes I wonder what she would think of everything that happened, of the choices each of us made. I like to believe she would approve of how I handled the betrayal with dignity, strategic thinking, and ultimately, a measured forgiveness that allowed the legacy to continue without destroying the family completely. The most important lesson I've learned through this journey is that true family businesses are built on merit and trust, not blood alone. The Harrington name continues, not because of unwavering family loyalty, but because I refuse to let betrayal define either the company's future or my own. If my story has taught me anything, it's that sometimes the most painful betrayals lead to the most powerful transformations. When your own family underestimates your worth, proving them wrong becomes the foundation for something even greater than what was taken from you. I know many of you have faced your own family business betrayals or watched powerless as your contributions were dismissed. I hope my journey gives you some sense that justice eventually finds its way, even if the path is longer than we'd like. If you've experienced something similar, or found your own way to turn betrayal into triumph, please share in the comments below. Your stories help others find strength in their own struggles. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to join our community of survivors who refuse to be defined by family betrayal. I share new stories each week about navigating complex family dynamics and building success on your own terms. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. Your support has been the unexpected gift that emerged from one of my life's darkest chapters.